So in this video, I'm going to be demonstrating how to do game 3 from prep test 71. Alrighty, so game 3, prep test 71. Alright, so for this one, it's an in and out game. Okay, so we have some of the items that are in the in group. In this case, those are the ones that are summarized. And the ones that are not summarized are going to be in the out group. So we have the in and out component, but then we also have a sequencing component. Okay, and typically what we find with games that involve both of these components is that you're only going to sequence the in group. But in this game, we actually are sequencing all of the items, and some of them are just in one category and some of them are in another. So that's how I would probably identify this game. But then when we get into the rules, we'll see that there are some rules that are maybe a little bit trickier, and some that follow more of our typical loose sequencing sort of format. Okay. So the items that we have are F, K, N, O, R, and T. There are 6 of them. All right, so we're going to be ordering them, and then we're going to be selecting some of them to be summarized. The first rule involves both of these ideas. So we can't have 2 summarized books next to each other. Okay, so this is a non-consecutive rule. Okay, so there's the idea of them being in the in group, right? We have to know that first, but then we also are dealing with the order, right? That they can't be side by side. So that rule deals with both components. The second rule just has to do with the in and out part. Okay, so that's if N is not summarized, so if N is out, then R and T are both summarized. Okay, and so if R isn't summarized or T isn't summarized, either of those on their own would tell me that N must be summarized. So that's our contrapositive. So the triggers are that one of these players is not summarized. This one, like I said, it is an in and out rule, right? It's just about the selection of who's summarized and who's not. Now, obviously, when we combine it with rule 1 and the rules that follow, then we're going to be dealing with both components. But this rule on its own just tells me who's in and who's out. Okay, rule 3, this one is purely a sequencing rule. So N before T and T before O. Rule 4 is also purely a sequencing rule, and we can actually add it to rule 3. So F is earlier than O, and O is earlier than K and R. Okay. So all 6 of our players are included in this web, which is super handy. And in fact, we can pretty much figure out what the options are for sequencing without doing too much work. So for the first 3 spots, we're going to be dealing with N, T, and F. F can be between T and O, between N and T, and before N. So if we wanted to show all the options for F, we could do that here, and then N just has to be before T. And we know that none of these guys can be later than 3rd because they have to have 1, 2, 3 after them. Okay. And then those final 3 spots, we actually know that O has to be 4th. So that's actually true in every world. O is always going to be 4th. And then for those last 2 spots, we have K, R, or RK. So that one I'm not going to bother actually splitting all of those out. because we just know for those two options we have R and K, and they could switch places, and that's fine. So we actually, in total, would only have 6 possible sequences, right? Which is not very many, right? But the added component of which ones are summarized and which ones are not is going to make things pretty tricky. Yeah. Okay. So which question should we do here? I will do the substitution question in another video, but I want to just start with one of these other questions. So if n is second, so sorry, I'm on question 13. I should say that first. If n is the second book, all right, so we're dealing with this world here, and it's not summarized. Now, if n is second and it's not summarized, R and T must be summarized. So we would have Fn, T, O, K, R, or the same thing, but R and K are switched. And if we know that N is not summarized, we know that T is summarized, and we also know that R is summarized. So no matter what, we know that O and K can't be summarized, right? Because we can't have 2 summarized books next to each other. So that isn't allowed. We can't have 2 circled next to each other. So these guys are going to have to be crossed out. F could be summarized though, right? F is next to N. So what could be true? A. A could be true. So we could summarize F in either of those worlds, and that's totally fine. Okay. So I'll do a video on the substitution question next, but if you want to kind of retry this diagram and do the first 4 questions on your own, then that would probably be good, and give the substitution question a try as well. It's always good if you try it out on your own more than once before looking at my explanation. Okay.